The sun hung low, casting long shadows across the barren expanse. Waves of heat from the desert radiated off the shimmering sand like the twinkle of stars on a clear night. Cornelius trudged through the arid landscape, his footsteps leaving little trace within the glittering sands. Wrapped in a tattered cloak and crowned with a wide-brimmed hat, Cornelius journeyed through the desolate hellscape for years, ever since after the collapse. Though a distant memory, the collapse was a cataclysmic event that brought the world to its knees. Cities crumbled, superpowers fell into anarchy, and the remnants of humanity scattered like roaches from a sudden blaze of light. He never saw the initial catalyst for the collapse, but he did witness the aftermath, the chaos, the destruction, and the endless struggle for survival. Now, he wandered the desert alone, seeking safety and solace in the silence. As the sun dipped below the horizon, giving way to a cool, dusky glow, Cornelius spotted something in the distance. Squinting his eyes, he saw a silhouette of a structure, an outpost standing defiantly against the arid sands. With a renewed sense of purpose, Cornelius quickened his stride, eager to discover what secrets laid within. Despite his newfound vigor, his back ached from the hard labor of consistent pilgrimage. Living the nomad's life wasn't easy, but it was usually peaceful. Usually. That didn't mean that Cornelius didn't carry a machete in his supply pack he lugged on his back. A wanderer can never bet too cautious in this world, after all. Cornelius arrived at the outpost just as the stars began to populate the black sky. A heap of wreckage surrounded the edifice, much of it covered in black powder and ash. Like a major battle took place here eons ago, now a gravesite for those long-forgotten violent days. Cornelius took note of a flag that was caught on a shard of metal as he passed by and made his way to the building. The outpost was old. Its walls were weathered and cracked just as much as his lips were chapped. But the outpost stood strong. The entrance was a hollow, dark cavity, gaping at him, seemingly inviting Cornelius to breach the fortress. Inside, the air was even cooler than the desert night. The smell of stale decay carried throughout. He pulled out his hand-cranked flashlight and illuminated the place. It was an eerie dwelling. Its silent corridors were vacant, and its rooms abandoned. Cornelius's footsteps echoed with a haunting belch with every step he took. His heart thudded as his senses were on high alert. Cornelius took note of a piece of cloth and some supplies, remnants of the past, torn uniforms, rusted weapons, and faded photographs of soldiers so young that they barely had a chance to live. This place had once been a stronghold, a bastion of a hope during a forgotten war. Cornelius's eyes widened as he entered a large room at the center of the outpost. In the dim light, he saw rows of grimy desks and shattered glass. A colossal map covered a wall, marked with what appeared to be other outposts and strategic points. Battle plans, even. A relic of hope for a losing cause. Cornelius decided to move on to another area. As he journeyed through the outpost, he found some sort of hidden door. Ajar from the bulkhead, it was painted to resemble. A secret passage. Within that passage, Cornelius entered a new chamber. The silence within felt different than the rest of the building. It seemed to carry whispers or faint echoes of conversations long gone. He paused his steps, trying to hear the ghostly voices, the spoke of battles, victories, and losses, memories of the war, memories so old that they would find no place in the world today. Then he spotted something on the ground, an old binder full of personal belongings, letters and journals, its pages yellowed with age. Cornelius began to read. The journal belonged to a soldier named Captain Victor Thomas. His first few passages listed achievements and victories, items one might use for their memoirs. He fought valiantly during the war. His words painted a vivid landscape of the war in this particular theater. The camaraderie and the sacrifices made by those who had once called this outpost home. As Cornelius read on, he couldn't help but feel a deep connection to the forgotten souls that once walked the halls of this fortification. All for naught, he whispered to himself. All for naught. The night wore on, and Cornelius found himself drawn to the outpost's communication room. As he approached, the air grew colder, the whispers louder. Cornelius was starting to wonder if there was something wrong with him. Dehydration and exhaustion, playing tricks on his mind. He hoped that were the case. It wouldn't do to go mad here. Pushing open the door to the communication room, he was startled with a wretched sight. A withered body sitting at a monitor, its face planted on the desk, like a troubled child placed into detention, back when schools existed. It reeked the way spoiled meat and sewage did. Cornelius presumed it was a mere corpse, until it spoke. "Who are you?" it hissed. "Who authorized you?" Cornelius's hairs stood erect. His heart was a battering ram of trepidation. I'm Cornelius," he managed to choke out. "Who are you?" There was a slight shuffle. Something from the man's desk. Lights from the ceiling fluorescence illuminated, and a low hum of a generator powered up. Other monitors throughout the chamber began to boot up, as a large screen in front of the forward wall came to life. A face appeared on that screen. It was a handsome man, one of polished grooming and a healthy diet. He looked to be in his 30s, though his eyes had been darkened by a life harder than most. "Greetings," the face said. "You are speaking to the mirror image of Captain Victor Thomas, commander of Outpost 37. I am an AI, embedded with all of Captain Thomas's knowledge and standing orders." The body that once hissed words collapsed, and Cornelius jumped back, startled. He now appeared lifeless, his skin blue and rotted. The spoiled flesh smelled worse somehow. Had Cornelius imagined his words? He looked up to the AI image of Captain Thomas. "What happened here?" Cornelius asked. The gaze on the AI's image of Captain Thomas seemed to grow distant as it recounted the events of Outpost 37. He spoke of a powerful enemy, as ruthless as it was relentless. The outpost was a key strategic point to hold the hordes from spilling into the major population centers. It was futile, however, as they were overrun by the increasing hordes that eventually overran their defenses, leaving the outpost in ruins and the inhabitants lost to their savagery. When the image of Captain Thomas came to the end, Cornelius felt a sense of duty take some measure of hold on him. A glimmering light in a dark, cold world. He had wandered the desert for so long, caught in a state of survivorship and personal security, unwilling to join any hint of civilization that might harbor him ill will or camaraderie. "I'm so sorry for your losses," Cornelius told the image of Captain Thomas. "Your condolences are appreciated," it said, "though unnecessary. You have quite the mission ahead for yourself, you know." Cornelius looked at the image quizzically, arching an eyebrow. "Captain, you may not know this, but the war is over," Cornelius said. "Whatever was left the country, of humanity really, it's all gone. We lost. We might have lost the country, but the war is not over," the AI said. Cornelius's heart began to quicken again. What could this computer-generated mirror of a man possibly be talking about? Perhaps it didn't know what it was talking about. Surly, the thing was riddled with glitches and lost data. Years of solitude within a blistering desert, running on idle with low power and no other people to interface with, must have wreaked havoc on the central computer's processing power. "You are mistaken," Cornelius said. "Nothing exists within the desert, dead or alive." "Nothing exists alive in the desert," the AI said. "Of that, you are right. But the dead still roam this desert." "I don't understand," Cornelius said. "Look," the AI said. One of the monitors coughed an array of static before displaying an image of exterior footage. A landscape of the desert on the view screen, the sand twinkling and shifting under the moon's glow, shifting from wind, scuffling even, more than scuffling though. Cornelius took a step closer at the screen and began to see something dreadful. The ground was rising. Heads and bodies emerged from the sand like the resurrection of all the world's dead, coming to seek vengeance against Outpost 37. They began to march toward the building in droves, an army of corpses seeking to make war against an army of one. "What is this madness?" Cornelius said. "The enemy," Thomas's AI said. "They are the thing that destroyed us. Once the slaughter was over, they fell to the ground and were washed away by the sand. There were no more bodies for them to hunt, no warm bodies to consume, until you arrived, that is." Something clawed at his ankle, and Cornelius shot his eyes down to see in terror the withered body of Captain Thomas, the real Captain Thomas. Now, a lifeless monster's tearing at Cornelius. His mouth was wide open as he tried to pull Cornelius into his mouth, a mouth that was full of bloodied teeth and chunks of dead meat. Cornelius pulled away and leaped back yards, gasping in horror. "What the hell is that?" Cornelius shrieked. "The brain," the AI said. "You must destroy the brain. It's the only way to kill them." The undead soldier rose from the floor and began to ambulate its way toward Cornelius like a drunkard, spiteful man, hell-bent on destroying anything or anyone in its way. Its eyes were white with a vacancy as it growled with blind rage. Cornelius quickly dashed out of the chamber and rushed down the hall, hearing the corpse of Captain Thomas slog with increasing speed as he made pursuit. Suddenly, the whispers began to return, and Cornelius realized it was this creature chasing him. The tattered remnants of the military uniform clung to its decayed frame. Its eyes glowed crimson and gold with a malevolent hunger. The beast hissed and growled a barrage of haphazard commands and orders, like haunted memories of a war that won't let him go. In his haste, Cornelius tripped over a piece of debris and fell to the deck, cursing in fright as he turned back. The living corpse managed to gain ground on Cornelius as it wobbled over with a striking speed, though Cornelius was able to get up to his feet before turning away again. The creature, nevertheless, managed to grab his arm, its grip like a vice. Grunting with heightened terror, Cornelius kicked the creature in the chest, sending it sprawling backward. He knew he needed to act quickly. He then searched around for a weapon or tool that would give him an advantage. His gaze landed on a rusted metal pole, half buried under debris. He sprinted towards the object, hot on his heels. He yanked the pole free and turned just in time to see the undead lunging at him again. With a fierce cry, he drove the pole through the creature's chest, pinning it to the ground. The corpse of Captain Thomas thrashed and writhed, its grotesque face contorted in a blubbering rage. Cornelius then took off Hasbag and pulled out the machete he nearly forgot he had, and with a swift and powerful swing, severed the creature's head. The undead body fell limp to the ground, no longer animated. Breathing heavily, Cornelius stepped back, wiping the sweat from his brow. He looked around the deserted outpost, the silence now even more pronounced. The echoes of this creature's mindless military commands were still excreting from its mouth, like vomit. Cornelius took his machete and made one mighty swoop on the decapitate head. The blade sliced through the bone and into the meat of its skull. Captain Thomas gave one final moan before its tongue fell out slack and stopped chomping with its cannibalistic maw. With a final glance at the defeated corpse, Cornelius knew he couldn't linger. There was still a horde of undead, rotting corpses animating themselves and making their way to the outpost to reconquer what they once left in ruin. It was with reluctance did Cornelius return to the comm room. He hadn't a clue how to outlast the impending horde of decrepit corpses invading the outpost. The AI image of what was once a cognitive, living Captain Thomas remained on the main screen. "All right," Cornelius said. "How the hell can I get out of here without those things catching me?" "I don't know about escape," the AI said, "but I do know that they broke in because we never activated the automatic defenses." "Automatic defenses?" Cornelius asked. "That's right," the AI said. "When activated, the blast doors shut and gun turrets rise from their bunkered areas around the perimeter, shooting absolutely anything that makes a movement within a quarter of a kilometer. But that thing wouldn't stop coming at me until I smashed in its brains," Cornelius pointed out. "What if these guns don't aim for the head?" "Those guns are Phalanx close-in weapon systems," the AI barked. "They fire 20mm high explosive incendiary tracers at 4,500 rounds a minute. Believe me, there won't be anything left of any moving man, woman, or zombie by the time they're done shooting." "Fair enough," Cornelius said. "All right, how do we activate them?" "There are several protocols that were already activated prior to your arrival," the AI said. "The problem is, there's a fail-safe that stops the weapons from triggering in case we're abandoning the facility." "Okay, well, what is it?" Cornelius asked impatiently. "In the event of a full retreat, the outpost's flag is taken down and stowed with our gear," the AI said. "Embedded within that flag is the activation chip that sets off the entire system. Think of it as a key. If we were to retreat, we would take the flag, and thus the activation key, so that the enemy couldn't use the system defenses against us when we regrouped and came back to retake the base." "And nothing will work without it?" Cornelius asked. "Nothing will work without it," the AI said. Taking a deep breath, Cornelius tightened the straps on his leather satchel, ensuring it was securely fastened to his back. He then lifted his machete and flung the leftover residue of blood and brain gore off the blade. He looked back at the mirror image of the soldier, long dead. "Good hunting," it said. Cornelius turned away and retraced his steps until he came to where he entered. Outside, there were whispers of moans and growls, lurking in the dark of night. He moved stealthily, hugging the shadows as he left to the perimeter. He navigated through the maze of debris, broken down vehicles, jeeps that were even rolled over to act as bulwark. He went on searching for the tattered flag he saw on the way in. Then a glimmer caught his eyes. The faint reflection of one of the rings from the flag, glistening from the light of the moon, like a lighthouse, signaling a distant ship. Surrounded by the flag caught on the wreckage was the swarm of walking corpses, scouring the debris for something, anything, or anyone that was full of life and warm with flesh. Someone like Cornelius, ripe for devouring. Cornelius narrowed his eyes as he observed the creature's movements, searching for patterns in their aimless shuffling. He would need to be quick and precise to reach the flag, unnoticed. Drawing closer, Cornelius spotted a narrow alleyway between a few transport trucks that were battered from the old battles. He crouched low and darted in between the broken-down vehicles, pausing at the egress. The undead were clustered in small groups, their decaying forms swaying as they shuffled aimlessly. Cornelius locked eyes onto the flag, flapping in the breeze like a desperate plead for help. He knew what he had to do. Summoning every ounce of courage, Cornelius slipped out from between the military trucks, his movements fluid and silent, like how he grew up hiding from roving gangs and bandits. He weaved between more debris, heart pounding in his ears as he closed the distance to the flag. Just as he reached more rubble, a corpse turned, its empty yellow eyes zeroing in on him. Cornelius didn't hesitate. He wielded his machete and hacked into the creature's skull, killing the thing quickly. Only a meager snapping sound discharged from the strike before the body slumped to the ground. With the immediate threat neutralized, Cornelius turned his attention to the flag. He carefully unhooked it from the rubble, freeing the tattered fabric. Grasping it tightly, he took survey of his surroundings to ensure was still unnoticed. He then wrapped the flag around his arm and sprinted towards the courtyard. His hands trembled as he fastened the flag to the pole, his mind racing, high on adrenaline. As he began to raise the flag, a low growl reached his ears. He turned to see a small group of undead converging on his position. Cornelius kicked it into high gear and worked faster, his hands a blur as he hoisted the flag higher. The creatures closed in, snarling with an angered hunger, but Cornelius knew he couldn't let fear paralyze him. With a final push, the flag reached the top of the pole, fluttering in the wind. There was a moment of tense silence, which was followed by a hum of power as alarms blared to life. Cornelius took flight back to the entrance where a blast door began to shut. As that door lowered, automated turrets emerged from the hidden compartments, targeting the creatures. Cornelius continued to hustle toward the falling door and dropped to the ground to roll underneath. The door sealed shut with a loud thud. From within the outpost, Cornelius could hear a series of explosions erupt from the gunfire as the defense turrets took bloody revenge. Breathing heavily, Cornelius slowly stood up and made his way down the corridor again. When he reached the communication room, the AI image of Captain Thomas seemed to be beaming. Other monitors showed a heap of spilled blood and gore, painting the surface of the desert. "Congratulations," the AI said. "A lot of old soldiers would be happy to see this day." Through the security camera, the sun began to rise on the horizon. Cornelius allowed himself a moment of triumph. He had succeeded in raising the flag and activating the defenses. The outpost, once lost to chaos, now represented a glimmer of hope, if not for the brave souls that once manned it, at least to Cornelius and his continued will to survive.